What is up, Buffalo Fanatics? Z-Bot here with you, live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel on a Sunday night. And that, of course, can only mean one thing. It is the smoke break. So good to have you in on this 13th of July. For those who are hanging around for a while now, apologies for the delay. Couldn't get anything to work. If you know me by now, you know that's a common theme. Camera wouldn't work. Chrome, for some reason, wouldn't work. And then the microphone wouldn't work. From what I can tell right now, all systems are a go. I didn't want to use the mic or the camera built into my computer because it looks terrible. So I got the camera to work. Mic sounds good, I hope. Let me know if it does not, but I think it does. Chrome's obviously working, and I'm working on the smoke break on a Sunday night. Once again, so good to be with you. It's been too long. Haven't seen you guys in a while, but excited to be back, and excited, more importantly, as I know you are, for football to be back. We are officially 10 days away from the start of Buffalo Bills training camp. We are less than 6 weeks away from college football kicking off, and we are 8 weeks to the day from our first Sunday of NFL football. Week 1 kicks off in 8 weeks from today. Right around an hour or so from now, the Buffalo Bills will be getting set to take on the Baltimore Ravens. It's this close, folks. Absolutely cannot wait. But once again, so good to be with you. It's been a while, but we're back in full gear with training camp right around the corner. We're going to be rolling. Let me know what's been up with you guys. Missed you a lot. It's been a couple of weeks, so let me know what's new in the comments. I let everybody get in here. As I said before, there was probably a lot of people waiting at 6, and we're like, where the hell is this guy? And then said, screw it. He's late. I'm not coming, and I don't blame him. Once again, a million errors as always, but it looks like we got things going in the right direction. So lots been going on with me. That's why I need football to start. I need football to start so badly because last night I found myself, I was out watching TV, finishing up the quarterback series. Found myself rewatching old children's television shows that I forgot existed that I watched while I was growing up. I don't know if anybody in here watched Between the Lions. One of my favorite shows growing up, forgot it existed, somehow popped up on my YouTube algorithm last night. Here I am at like midnight on a Saturday, rewatching Between the Lions that I haven't watched since I was 5 years old and had all of these core memories that had dissipated over the years immediately come back. And as I'm watching this, it hits me. I need football back in the worst way. Koala Bear knows what I'm talking about. Between the Lions on PBS. Yes. Between the Lions, brought to you by the public broadcasting system and loyal viewers like you. That's how they would open it up. I forgot it existed. And here I am watching it, and I'm like intrigued by it. And then it hits me, man, I need football back in the absolute worst of ways. Thank God it's right around the corner. Training camp is going to be the perfect buffer between when we get real football back, finally get to see these Buffalo Bills in action. And of course, we parlay that with the Buffalo Bills being on Hard Knocks, which will be taking place in less than a month. It'll be nuts. So a lot coming around the corner. Richie Fresh kicking us off tonight. But you're at a restaurant with me and the wife. We're having blueberry and peach cider and a gluten-free margarita pizza. So, Richie, are you out right now or what? What's the deal? You're watching me with the wife while you're out and you're having a cider and a pizza in my honor? Because if so, I couldn't be more honored, especially if you're doing the gluten-free and the cider on my behalf. I wouldn't recommend it. If you don't have to have gluten-free pizza, I would not recommend having it. I would recommend the ciders, however. I do love the cider. So Richie alluded to it right there. Have been very busy. We have a new member joining the Buffalo Fanatics in November. In fact, we have a new member of the Bills Mafia joining us in November. I don't know if anybody here follows me on my personal social media. I know some of you might. I know Richie does. But we got a new member coming, and that is Baby Bot. Baby Bot will be making his debut or her debut. We do not know what the baby is. It's always easier for me to say. I keep doing that. His or her. I keep doing that because I don't have a direct gender to refer to yet. We are not finding out until the day of. And the day of, in terms of Bills related content, will be between week 11 and week 12. So Baby Bot will be joining us between the Miami Dolphins game in week 11 and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game in week 12. Caroline and I are so excited. Right now, Caroline, I think, is going into her 23rd week on Monday. And just as football is right around the corner, so is the delivery of Baby Bot. So right around the midway point of the season, right after we get after that point, Baby Bot will be here. So a new member of the Fanatics, a new member of Bills Mafia, and I'm so excited to share with you guys and so excited to be a dad, and it's going to be amazing. It's crazy. So obviously we've known for some time now. It's been since March, and of course you have to wait it out and make sure everything's good to go, and knock on wood, things have been going good, and now we're just playing the waiting game, which is tough, because you're excited and you don't want to rush it, of course, because this is the last time that we'll ever have without Baby Bot in the world. So you want to appreciate this time because it's not often that you're in this period of time where you're getting ready to have a kid. So it's just wild. It still hasn't hit me. I don't think it will hit me until the day of, really. Caroline's showing I'd have her come over here and show you the baby bump if she wasn't at work, but she'll probably be back before I finish up. You know how it goes. So once she gets back, if she's willing, perhaps we'll show off the baby bump. But it's not like it's so weird. And I'm sure so many of you guys have experienced this. Of course, all of you who are parents have experienced this. It's just so odd when you're not a parent yet, knowing you're going to be one, but you just don't know what to do in this interim period. And that's why I feel like the second that our baby comes to the world, that's when it'll hit me, and that's when it'll all come together. So can't wait. Cannot wait. Student Body coming in saying, you truly are a Bills fan. Not knowing the gender is mental masochism. Congrats, my man. It's so funny you say that. Everybody that we mentioned to, because obviously one of the first questions that everybody asked once they found out we were having a baby or we tell them or whatever else just comes up in conversation. The immediate question usually is, so what are you having? And we respond with, well, we don't know. We're not finding out. And almost every time we say that, it's met with like, you're kidding. Really? No way. I could never do that. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the majority of people didn't do that. Obviously, it's very common. People do find out, but I still thought that there was a good bulk of people who didn't. But from what I've experienced personally and just talking with people who ask us, they're more often than not just stunned that we're not finding out. But it's funny you say that. Of course, being a Bills fan, there's no more of a mental gymnastics course that you have to go through as a fan of anything than being a Buffalo Bills fan. So perhaps that has trained me to have the mental fortitude to wait this out. I've been waiting out a Buffalo Bills Super Bowl since I was born. I was waiting out a Buffalo Bills playoff appearance from when essentially I was born until I was in college. So I have been playing the mental waiting game for some time. So it's a great point that you make, because perhaps this has trained me. I don't know what trained Caroline, because she was fully on board. We both were completely in alignment here. It wasn't like she wanted to find out and I said no, or vice versa. We were both in complete alignment on that. So it just adds to the surprise, which is awesome. I think that's also why it has felt up until this point, like surreal. I think if we knew what the gender was, maybe it would, maybe you would feel a bit more like, oh, what the name, you had the name picked out, what the gender is. You're already starting to imagine what that looks like. But when you don't know, there's still that element of it's up in the air. You just don't know. So I think that's also one reason why it has felt even more surreal up until this point, because we still do not know. But it just adds that much more of a suspense level and an excitement level to when it comes. Now, I do find it funny, however, back to pertaining to the Bills, when the baby will be born, it will be, like I said, between week 11 and week 12. You imagine in any other situation, by the way, saying this, hopefully Caroline tuned out because she probably doesn't want to hear me talking about, so the baby will be born. Oh, when do you do? Yeah, well, the baby's born between when the Bills play the Dolphins and the Bucks. So baby will be born around week 11 of the 2025 NFL season. I mean, you imagine saying that in any other setting. That's why it's good to be back with you here on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel, because you guys get it. But what's funny is the Sunday before our baby is due, the baby is due November 10th. So the Sunday prior, the Dolphins game, week 11, that's November 9th. So who knows? I've always had, for some odd reason, I think Enrico and I have talked about on this before, on here before. I've always had this weird this weird idea in my head of like Caroline going into labor. Bills are like down to the wire playing in a game. Like that would be, I don't know why that always was like the thought that I had. Very well could be the reality. Very well could be. But supposedly due the day after the Dolphins game, hopefully we're ushered in a win. Luckily for me, luckily for all of us, we are never in a better position to get a W than when Josh Allen takes on the Miami Dolphins. Of course, this one will be on the road in Miami. The Bills play the Miami Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. As you well know, week 3, that is the night that we are doing our event at the Ralph. Me, Rico, Dan Mitchell, and the AFC East Roundtable boys cannot wait for that. But the second Dolphins game there will be when the baby's due. So wanted to let all you guys know, because we kind of let the world know a couple of weeks ago, which was odd too, because we hadn't really told our immediate family and our friends and whatnot, but we hadn't me and Caroline were talking about this the other day. It's weird now how in the era of social media, your world, not everybody knows what you have going on unless you say something or whatever. And everybody says something about everything. And up until that point, there were so many people who didn't know. And I'm sure a lot of you who do follow me on Instagram or whatever found out through there. And I wanted to make sure when I did get back on here with you guys that I let you know personally. So it'll be fun. It'll be a journey that we're all going to be on together, I guess, in a weird way, because the baby's coming right in the middle of the season. So, I'm going to still be on here 6 times a week or whatever it is. You'll be seeing Baby Bot and you'll be seeing Dad Bot. You'll be seeing the combination of that as we head into the playoffs. So it's hilarious. Caroline's in here. Caroline's in. By the way, she is doing great. I mean, it's unbelievable. Rock star. She did go and get her McDonald's this afternoon, though. She had to make sure that Baby Bot was satiated. She said, we're not planning a home birth. I'm guessing somebody in here recommended a home birth if the game is on, and maybe we just take care of business here while the game is on. But I think Caroline would probably leave me if that wound up being our plan of action. So not the case. But so that's the world I'm in right now, about to be a dad. I don't even know what else to say. I'm like losing, if you know me, I'm usually not at a loss for words. Something stuck in my tooth. I'm usually not at a loss for words, but I've been kind of at a loss for words for this, because like, what do you say? I don't know. Never been a dad before. About to be Papa Bot. All right, so that's that, and I'll keep you updated along the way. Of course, it's coming around the bend, and as is the season. The Buffalo Bills, as I mentioned, kick off training camp in 10 days from now. College football Saturday is 6 weeks from yesterday. And as Chris Hansen tweeted out today, we are an octo box away from the first NFL Sunday, 8 weeks away from kickoff. And a lot to talk about tonight. some pertaining to the season itself and what that looks like. Wanted to touch on the Buffalo Bills, their offense, what we saw last year, and if we can expect to see the same thing this year. My buddy Joe Marino, all you guys know him, tweeted out something very interesting the other day that had the wheels spinning up in my noggin about the Bills offense, how it correlates to the defense, and if they're able to repeat what they've been doing, in particular what the offense did last year, how that could correlate to the Buffalo Bills finally getting to February football. So we'll be talking about that tonight. New rumor on the block of a Buffalo Bills brand new helmet. And you know how much that means to me. You know how much I have been pounding the table, how long I've been pounding the table for a brand new Buffalo Bills helmet ever since the NFL ushered in the ability to have alternate helmets. The Bills have not taken advantage of that opportunity. Rumor has it they will be taking advantage soon. We'll be talking about that this evening as well. And I also want to talk about the Netflix quarterback series. Season 2 of Quarterback came out. Just finished it. Let me know in the comments if you guys watched it. I just finished it. I think it's an unreal series. They do an amazing job. The first season rather, that featured Mahomes and whatever it was last year was incredible. Then they did Receiver that had Devontae Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I absolutely loved that. And season 2 of Quarterback was phenomenal as well. There are a lot of cool tidbits within that I wanted to discuss tonight. And if you watched it, I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts on it as well. There were a few Buffalo Bills moments in there, too, which were exciting. Of course, Jared Goff, if you didn't know, the 3 quarterbacks that were featured on season 2 of Quarterback were Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, and Kirk Cousins. The Bills only played the Lions of those 3 teams this past season. We all know how crazy that Lions game was. That was featured on the show. And I thought there were a couple of cool tidbits from there. It's always cool to watch the Bills. This is why I can't wait for Hard Knocks, by the way. It's always cool to watch them as the scary team. As you're watching series like this, and it accelerates throughout the season. It's only 7 episodes. So it's not like they're going from week to week throughout the season. They show the whole year in a condensed amount of time. And they'll just skip through games. Like, they'll play whoever, just a random example. Like, you're playing the Titans or the Panthers. Like, they're not building up to this game. In the show, they were really building up to that Bills game, how big it was. And we all remember how big that game felt. Up until that point, everybody thought that was going to be a Super Bowl preview, or at least a potential Super Bowl preview. The Lions were on an 11-game win streak at that time. I believe one of their longest, if not the longest. It has to be the longest in their franchise history. Bills went into their dome and knocked them off in prolific fashion, in particular offensively. And obviously the Lions defense massively banged up until that point. But we'll talk about that a bit later on in the show as well. So let's kick things off with the Buffalo Bills and the title of the episode, which is the Buffalo Bills offense in 2024 fluky? Now, what does that mean by that? What do I mean by that? Was the Buffalo Bills offense last season a fluke? And you might be wondering, well, what would be fluky about it? They've been prolific since Josh Allen has taken over at the quarterback position. I mean, really, ever since Josh Allen's rookie year and then the ascension the second year, ever since then, the Buffalo Bills have been prominently one of the best offenses in football. And even more recently, as Josh Allen has gotten into the later stages of his career here, they have been unarguably a top 5 offense. So what would be fluky about it? What could possibly be the fluke with the Buffalo Bills? Because they have been consistently great. And how does that correlate to the defense? Right? Because the defense has been the biggest question for these Buffalo Bills since Josh Allen has taken over. The majority of us feel that the Buffalo Bills have come up short in the biggest moments because of the inadequacies of the defense, whether it be injuries or whether it just be the inability to keep opponents from scoring pretty much 30 points per game in the bigger playoff games. Not to say that all playoff games aren't big, but of course, when you're playing the Chiefs as many times as the Bills have up until this point, they're averaging right around that 30-point mark every time that they play them. That's been the primary concern. So what was the flukiness of it, right? Well, the Buffalo Bills last year, and I don't think we all knew it. I got to turn the fan on. You know how it goes. By the way, I feel a little rusty tonight. I got to shake the rust off. I'm glad I'm doing this right now before camp kicks off. It's been a minute. feeling a little rusty, a little flustered about the dad thing, and then haven't been on in a bit. So we're shaking the rust off. You know I love all of you. I appreciate you allowing me to do that. By the way, speaking of the putting the fan on, I don't know. You guys know that I'm like always hot on this thing. I'm like, even when I was at my heaviest, when I've been at my lightest, I've always been like the sweaty guy, which I hate. It's the worst. I don't know how many of you guys are like that, but last night we went out. Our friends are getting engaged, and we went to their engagement party, and it was at this bar, rooftop bar. Just, I mean, overpacked beyond belief. Just, it felt like we were in a sardine can, quite literally. And it was 100 degrees. You couldn't move. And it just felt like, it feels like everybody's just fine with that. And there I am. I'm just dying, sweating my ass off. And of course, I picked the one shirt in my closet that has no breathability whatsoever. It's like 100% cotton. Those are the nights where you break out the golf polo that has the Under Armour material. And of course I didn't. And I'm just soaked. And my one buddy comes up to me. He's like, dude, you're like an oil rig right now. I'm like, yeah, thanks for letting me know. I know it. Standing here beyond uncomfortable. And it's not just because I'm sweating. It's because it's 100 degrees and nobody else seems to be affected by it. I don't know what to do about it. I've read that there's like surgeries you can get. You can basically get like laser surgery to be able to close up your pores. That doesn't sound good. I don't know how that could possibly work. Apparently it exists. I'm not doing that. God knows. God only knows what would go down pursuing that avenue. No way insurance covers that. That's got to cost 50 grand or whatever. And it's not worth the not being the guy who's dripping at the bar. You know what I mean? But there's just nothing you can do about it. I always stood there. I'm like, why does no one else seem to be affected by this? But that's why I had to turn the fan on, because it's just, it's always hot. Big Papa's saying, by the way, skip cotton bot. Yeah, I know. And I wasn't thinking. I just wasn't thinking. I just threw some clothes on and went. I also didn't know. I thought we were going the engagement party. I thought it was going to be just our friends. I didn't know it was going to be at this bar. I mean, there was 10,000 people there, you know. So if you're a sweaty guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. God, just a lot going on up here. So last year, I just looked up these stats. And at the time, of course, we knew how amazing the Bills' offense was last year. But when you do look at the intricacies of the offense, the little details of what the Bills were able to pull off last year, you're reminded of just how impressive of a season it really was, that ultimately culminated in the AFC Championship appearance, where they did score 29 points. Should be enough to get it done in the majority of games, especially against the Chiefs team who hadn't scored more than 30 all year. Felt like the Bills' offense did their part and had done their part throughout the entire season. Had scored 30-plus points, what felt like every week. It was no secret as to how great they were. Josh Allen wins the MVP on the back of how great that offense was. But when you look at the nuances, when you look at the stats, go back and really take a deeper look at what the Buffalo Bills offense did last year, you are reminded just how impressive of a season it was. And so Joe Marino tweets out the other day, this is what got me thinking about this whole angle of the Buffalo Bills offense, because when we're going into the 2025 season, you really don't have any concerns about the Bills offense. Yeah, you might have some concern about James Cook's contract situation, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to how productive the Bills offense is going to be. You're just concerned whether or not James Cook's going to be a part of it in the future. Yeah, you might be concerned about the loss of Amari Cooper, the loss of Mac Hollins, and how are Elijah Moore and how are the new additions to this offense going to be incorporated, fill those roles? Are they going to be better? Is it going to be on a decline? Or Joshua Palmer as well, of course. What's that going to look like? You might have these small concerns, but in totality, you're going into this upcoming season knowing one thing when it comes to the Buffalo Bills offense, and this is the thing that matters the most. If Josh Allen's healthy, that's one of the best offenses in the league. If Josh Allen's healthy, this team, in all likelihood, walks to an AFC East title, walks to a playoff appearance. There really is nothing that you're concerned about when it comes to the Buffalo Bills offense, other than making sure that Josh Allen's health is, of course, taken care of throughout the year. And knock on wood, Josh Allen has been Iron Man since he's entered the league. He has his start streak that he's been riding for years now. So in all likelihood, you can rely on that unless something out of the ordinary happens. But last year, the Bills did different things that really took them to another level. They had been terrific on offense for the longest time. But the little things that they cleaned up had really resulted in an offense that had become, one that had separated from the pack. It felt like last year, the Bills' offense had really separated itself from the majority of the rest of the league. Yeah, you still had the Cincinnati Bengals. You still had the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course, what they have on that offense. You still had the Detroit Lions, of course. But the Bills' offense were right up there. And on any given week, they were better than any other offense in the entire league. It all really came down, and this is why I think Josh Allen ultimately wound up winning the MVP. It all came down to taking care of the football and also taking care of Josh Allen. The offensive line was terrific last year. The Bills, I believe, had the lowest sack rate in football last season. Josh Allen was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL. And I think it's no secret that also played a major role in the Bills having really an historic year in terms of not turning the ball over. The one criticism that always seemed to linger around Josh Allen was that he had the ability to turn into sugar high Josh Allen, where he would take a shot that wasn't there, that wasn't necessary. He'd try to make a play out of nothing in a situation that didn't warrant it, and it wound up leading to a turnover. Up until last year, if you were to ask anybody, what's the biggest criticism you have of Josh Allen? 9 out of 10 times, the answer that you were going to get was going to be he turns the ball over too much or he puts the ball in dangerous situations too much. Last year, it was the polar opposite. And what do you know? It led to the best offense we've seen from this franchise since the 90s. It led to Josh Allen winning the MVP. It led to them getting all the way to the AFC Championship. But when you look at just how good it really was statistically, it kind of blows you away, and it brings you back to just kind of soaking in what the Bills did and what they have the capability to continue to do if this offensive line plays at the caliber in which it has been playing, if Josh Allen just stays consistent, if these wide receivers, especially the newer ones and the younger ones, rise to the top, the possibilities are endless. So in looking at the Bills last season, plus 24 turnover differential. Number one in the league by a long shot. The Buffalo Bills had a plus 24 turnover differential, the number 2 team in the league in terms of point differential. Behind them, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were plus 16. So the second nearest team to the Bills at the top were still 8 away from the number that the Buffalo Bills were posing. It gets even crazier when you go beyond the top 2 in Buffalo and in Pittsburgh. Outside of those 2, the Bills had at least doubled up every single other team in the NFL's turnover differential. Every single other team. Other than the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Buffalo Bills had more than double, or at least double, the turnover differential. The third team in the league with the best turnover differential in 2024 posed a plus 12 turnover differential. And that really was the difference. And you also wonder if the Bills were to have turned the ball over at a rate that they were doing prior, or even if they were turning it over in a top 10 fashion, right? Say the Bills didn't have a historic year, really, in terms of not turning the ball over. Even if you ticked them down to like the 5th best turnover ratio or turnover differential ratio in the league, how much different would the season have been last year? Because the defense in itself was already having, in comparison to the offense at least, their struggles. What would the season in totality have looked like if the Bills just had a slightly worse turnover differential? Or what would it have looked like if the Bills had an average turnover differential? This was truly the major separation from what the Buffalo Bills were prior to last year, what they were in 2024, and the potential for what they could be in the future here if they are able to stay around where they were last year. Now, was it a fluke? This is where it gets interesting, because in order to have a great turnover differential, of course, the defensive side of the ball has to be turning the other team over. Yeah, the Bills can protect the ball all they want offensively, but if the defense isn't getting them the ball back, then it's not going to be what it wound up being last season. When you combine the two, when you combine the Bills' ability to not give it away with the Bills' defense's ability to take it away, that's what really led to them putting up 30 points nearly every single week and being one of the best teams in football all the way until the end of the year. When you talk about this defense, yeah, it has its struggles. The inability to get after the passer has been something that, of course, the Bills have been trying to solve for the longest time, and it does feel like that is the one big piece missing. But I've always defended this defense to some degree because I don't think it's nearly as bad as it gets, talked about. This is the primary reason why. For all their struggles, the ability to turn the ball over has really offset perhaps other areas in which this Bills defense is lacking in. What they did last year, it was incredible in terms of the numbers. They forced 32 turnovers, an equal amount of both. 16 forced interceptions, 16 forced and recovered fumbles. And now you might be thinking, well, are the Bills going to be able to repeat that? You're already wondering if the Bills' offense is going to be able to protect the ball the way that they did last year. But the Bills' defense is going to have to match that if they want to have a similar season to last year. Was the Bills' defense the one that had the fluke season? This is where it gets very interesting. So Joe Marino tweeted this out the other day, and he had used the word fluky. He said, you often hear that takeaways are fluky. And that does seem to be one of the things in the NFL that does seem to fluctuate more than other areas in terms of statistics. You get a batted ball here, goes up in the air, and it gets picked off by a lineman. Or, you get a muffed punt or whatever that all result in fumbles. Oftentimes turnovers forced, they're not necessarily anything the defense did. Sometimes it's just a mistake that the offense made. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you just kind of stumble into getting the ball back. But that's not what the Buffalo Bills did last year. In fact, what they did last year has been consistent to what they've been doing every year for the past 5 years. Joe Marino tweeted out the last 5 years of the Buffalo Bills' defensive drive results in which that drive resulted in a turnover. So the last 5 years of the drives in which the Buffalo Bills defense was out on the field and forced a turnover, the numbers are off the charts. Number 1 in the league the last 2 seasons, top 7 in the league the last 5 seasons in a row. Number 1 in 2024, number 1 in 2023, number 5 in 2022, number 7 in 2021, number 2 in 2020. So 3 of the last 5 seasons, the Bills have had a top 2 defense in terms of turning the ball over on any given drive. So even though turnovers might seem like one of the more fluky things in football, it hasn't been for this Buffalo Bills defense. It's really been their identity. The Bills defense and what they've been able to bring to the table has primarily relied upon turning the other team over. And it's not something that you go into this season expecting not to happen again because of the consistency in which they've done it. Last year, this is crazy. 17.5%. Let me just make sure I'm getting this right, because this number is nuts. Yeah. 2024. Of all of the drives against the Buffalo Bills defense, 17.5% of them resulted in a defensive takeaway. Nearly 1/5 of every time the Bills defense stepped out on the field resulted in them forcing a turnover. That's nuts. So we talk about going into this year, can the Bills defense live up to the potential that the offense has kind of set in place? The potential of this team has felt like it's reliant on the Bills offense, the Bills defense reaching its full potential. This kind of has you wondering if the Bills offense is going to be able to match what the Bills defense has been able to do in this category. Because I think last year, the reason why the Bills sort of felt like they were better than ever is, especially when you look at what they lost. You can't forget going into the last season, the amount of people that doubted the Buffalo Bills' ability to even be as good as they were previously, not taking a step forward. The majority of people last year, and rightfully so to some degree, based on the departures of the offseason going into 2024, had felt as though the Buffalo Bills offensively were going to decline. How much? Who knows? But they felt at the very minimum marginally. It wound up being the opposite. They took a step forward, and it truly was one of the best offensive years this franchise has ever had. And I think it all points right back to this number, this turnover differential number. And in order for the Bills to be able to repeat what they did last year, and I've talked about this on here before, where I say, you look at what they did last season, and it's a really hard metric to repeat, or it's a really hard bar to get back to when you are scoring 30 points every single week, going up and down the field. This is what it's all going to come down to. And it's ultimately going to come right back to Josh Allen himself. The offensive line in Josh Allen. 6 interceptions for Allen last year, 2 total fumbles for the team in general, in terms of ones that were recovered by the other team. 8 total turnovers. At minimum, you're playing 17 games. You think about it, and it's honestly crazy. You go in and look at these numbers, and I'll show you the numbers just to give you a visual as to what this looks like, especially based on what other teams were doing as well. Because even the best teams in the league in terms of turnover differential still weren't able to do what the Bills were doing. I mean, like I told you, the Pittsburgh Steelers were at plus 16, but they gave the ball away 17 times. Look at this number. The only other team close was the LA Chargers. Look at the rest of the league here. Look at what the rest of the league in terms of turnover numbers looked like compared to the Buffalo Bills. Ravens, hell of a year, but the defense wasn't taking it over nearly enough, right? They only had 17 takeaways. Bills defense had nearly double that. So even though the Ravens offense protected the ball extremely well, it can only be fully capitalized on if the defense is taking it over at a major clip. This number to me, though, when I looked this up, stunned me. Because when you do look at it in comparison to the rest of the league, least amount of turnovers, and outside of the Chargers and the Ravens, I mean, it really isn't close anywhere else. Look at the amount of teams that are in the mid-teens at minimum or the 20s. I mean, it's the majority of the league. And this is why, to me, it's no secret as to what the Buffalo Bills were able to do a season ago. You look at that number, and it would clearly tell you the Bills' offense had an incredible year. If you looked at nothing else, if you didn't even know Josh Allen won the MVP, you didn't know what the score of any given game was, if you looked at that number alone, you would know the Bills had a successful season. That single metric in itself would let you know that the Buffalo Bills had a hell of a year in 2024. 32 forced turnovers, 8 turnovers on the other end. Can the Bills offense repeat that, though? And that's the question. So this is where I wonder if there's going to be, hopefully, what I think to be an offset. I don't think the Bills, sustainably at least, can turn the ball over less than 10 times each and every season here, whether it's just this upcoming year or the future. Turning it over less than 10 times, as you saw, there were only 2 teams in the league that did that. That's it. How sustainable is that? Well, based on what we've seen for the Buffalo Bills under Josh Allen, well, We can't say it's sustainable. As of right now, we have to say that that's the outlier. Offensively, what the Bills did last year in terms of taking care of the ball was the outlier in Josh Allen's career, quite significantly. And you look at what that led to, and I think it's a perfect correlation. It's two roads meeting at the exact same path. Can they do it again? Turning it over less than 10 times, I don't know how doable that is consistently. But what I've seen from the O-line, what I've seen from their ability to run the football, and then, of course, the progression in Josh Allen's career where he's gotten so much smarter, so much more mature, so much better with his decision-making, I think it's more likely that the Bills will be closer to what they did last year in terms of turning the ball over than it will be at any other point prior in Josh Allen's career. Will they turn the ball over slightly more? If I were to guess, probably. There's some luck that's involved in that too. And that's not just on the back of Josh Allen. He only had 2 fumbles last year. That's counting everything. Every running back, every receiver, everyone who touches the ball. Kickoffs, punts, you name it. There's an element of luck to that, and it's a team-wide effort. The Bills' defense, however, and their consistency in being able to routinely turn the other team over, we have a large enough sample size to know that that is sustainable, even though it seems like it shouldn't be. And in reality, it really shouldn't be. The Bills' defense does not get enough credit for what they have done under McDermott in terms of turning the ball over. You talk about the Bills' defense with anybody, the majority of the time, the conversation is going to be how they have been lesser than the offense. They have been more of a problem than the solution. But could you imagine what the situation would entail if the Bills if the Bills defense was not one of, if not the best team in the league at forcing turnovers? Say what you want about the Buffalo Bills defense, but that is unarguable. The Bills defense is one of, if not the best defense in the entire NFL at turning the football over. And regardless of what else you're doing in coverage, getting after the passer, what's more important than keeping points off the board and forcing turnovers? And of course, forcing turnovers correlates to not only taking points off the board for the other team, but putting points on the board for the Buffalo Bills and their offense. You can't help but wonder what it would look like if the Bills haven't found a way to sustainably force other teams into making mistakes. And last year is the first year in this 5-year window that the Bills defense has been turning the ball over at an unreal clip. Last year was the first year where the Bills offense finally was able to match what the Bills defense was doing in terms of the turnover differential. And look what that culminated in. So there's a few ways to look at this. Let's start with the best, right? Because obviously we like to think hypothetically of the best case scenario with these Buffalo Bills. I don't know if you're all with me, but you know where I stand in the Bills defense going into this upcoming year. I just don't see how it's not better. I can't for the life of me fathom how this Bills defense is not better in 2025 with the amount of additions made. Nearly the entire draft was dedicated to this defense, and a bulk share of the offseason acquisitions were dedicated to this defense. I just, for the life of me, cannot fathom them not taking a step forward. How big that step is, I don't know. But for the life of me, I can't imagine that they're not going to be better. With that said, we have a 5-year period in which the Buffalo Bills have been one of the best teams in the league at turning the ball over. If the Bills offense can now find some consistency in not turning it over based on what they showed us last year, you pair that with the Bills defense getting better. I don't think anybody here is expecting a decline from Josh Allen or the offense. Maybe they don't score 30 a game, but they're still going to be in the high 20s. If we can get a better defense, if we can get the consistent play from this offense and Josh Allen, and we can also get the consistency in which the Buffalo Bills defense forces turnovers, I think that right there could be the ultimate difference. This entire time, we have found ourselves trying to find the little things that the Buffalo Bills can narrow in on in order to get over the hump. Because, of course, when you get that close every single year, as I've said 10 million times on here, it all comes down to the nuances. It all comes down to razor-thin differences that have unfortunately not gone the Bills' way in the biggest moments. And in order to have it go your way, you got to narrow in on those little details. The one detail the Bills have been absolutely dialed in on is turning the ball over for the other team, forcing turnovers. If the Bills defense takes a step forward and we just basically take a look at what we already know right now is that the Bills defense, the last half decade, best team in the league at forcing turnovers. What we already know, Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in football, Buffalo Bills offense, one of the best in the NFL. And what we already know is based on the amount of additions made to this defense this offseason, I think it's safe to say, it's safe to bet on the Buffalo Bills progressing defensively. These are already known things. And I think the formula there, if you take what you already know, the consistency of how good the offense is, the consistency of the Bills being able to force turnovers, and the all likelihood that the Bills defense will progress based on what they've added to the roster, how could that not result in narrowing in on a very marginal gap that the Bills have been trying to close for the last several seasons here? And that's what has me awfully excited. Now, of course, the other way to look at this is if we get a break from the norm from the Bills defense and they aren't forcing turnovers nearly as much, or the Bills offense regresses back to what they were doing prior to last year, where they're turning the ball over far more than we would hope. I think that there's probably going to be a wash in that the Bills offense will probably turn the ball over slightly more than they did last year. But if we can bank on the Bills defense forcing takeaways at the clip in which they have the last 5 years, then I think with the addition of defensive personnel that I think ultimately makes the totality of the team on that side of the ball better, I think it might be a wash. And if that's the case, I think we can confidently expect the Buffalo Bills to be as good as they were last year, this upcoming year, just based on working around this one particular stat. Signified's coming in. He says, who gives a shit how good they are at turnovers? The same team every year drops a season high on us in the playoffs. Let's not settle for mediocrity. And look, I totally agree. As I mentioned, you're bringing, if you bring up the Bills defense, that's the first thing that's going to come up. If Joe Marino did not point this out on Twitter, I would really have no idea of the consistency in which the Bills have been dominant at forcing takeaways defensively. Why is that? Well, because of the point you're making, Signified. Because when we're talking the Bills defense, more often than not, we're talking about coming up short, right? But if we're looking at what they do well, they not only do it well, they do it better than just about anybody. So if we're talking about trying to narrow that gap and you're talking about, allowing a season high in the playoffs or whatever else, this is where I think the refreshed look of this defense is going to factor in. If we can bank on forcing those turnovers and we can also bank on the D being better overall, then I think that's where we might see the difference. It is interesting, though, because oftentimes we do say, can the Bills defense find a way to bring to the table what the Bills offense has? Last year was ironically a situation where the Bills offense finally brought to the table what the Bills defense had been bringing for some time now. And this is the one thing I think we have to look at throughout the year in terms of how we can measure how good they're going to be throughout the full season. You're going to get a good read early on. The ability to take care of the ball, the ability to run the ball, and of course the protection up front and what Josh Allen's bringing to the table, of course. You usually get a good read early in the season as to what the team itself is going to look like. Obviously, it takes some time to get the legs underneath you and to really get a full definition of each and every team. But by now, we know what the Bills' offense is. What we don't know is if they're going to have the ability to protect the football as well as they did last season. And I think the early stage of the year is going to be pivotal in us understanding if they're going to be able to keep that up. But that to me is the one thing. It's the one thing. If the Bills offense is able to repeat that, then I think the Bills are right back where they are last year. And that's knocking on the door of the Super Bowl once again. if not for anything else. And this is why I find this stat to be so fascinating, because you could look at nothing else but this and have full confidence in the Bills' ability to sort of repeat what they did if they're able to get back to this. And the ability to bank on the Bills' defense, basically showing up each year, bringing to the table exactly what they did last year, leading the league in forcing turnovers. If you can bank on that, then it's all just going to come down to, once again, protecting the football on the other side. And they did it better than they ever have last year. And look what it resulted in. Now, in talking about the offense, running the football has been probably the biggest key of everything here. It all stems to the offensive line. The Bills they haven't been able to transition into well, they're still very Josh Allen dependent. I don't want to say that. I mean, we all know this. But they have progressed beyond being solely reliant on Josh Allen doing every single thing, every single play to win the game. And that has been because of the acceleration of this Bills offensive line and their ascension towards the top of the league, as opposed to being in the middle of the pack or lower. And that has, of course, resulted in, with the drafting of James Cook, a stout run game. And once the Bills truly had a run game that you had to respect nearly as much as you respect the passing game with Josh Allen, it opened up a whole new world where you didn't need a Diggs or a Davis, and you brought in new bodies and you brought in old veterans, and Josh Allen wins the MVP without batting an eye. Do that again this year, and there's just no way that they decline. My biggest concern, if anything, for the Bills offense has just been, can they repeat what they did last year? In order to do that, I think it all comes down to this one particular portion of each and every game, and that's protecting the football. You can't score 30 points per game if you don't have the amount of possessions that the Bills gave themselves each and every week. If a possession a week is being dedicated to going to the other team, I mean, that in itself can flip a handful of games in every year. And the reason why this is so big is because I do think it's going to come down to a game or two this year where the Buffalo Bills are going to be right there on the 1 seed, knocking on the door of it. And I do think this is the year that they have their best chance at getting it. With the AFC East being down the way that it is, with the schedule lined up the way that it is, I just feel as though this year, up until this point, is the best opportunity to get the 1 seed the Bills have had. And there's part of me that thinks it might be the best opportunity they will have moving forward here, based on how everything is aligning, based on who they have to play, based on the current state of the AFC East. It's not going to be down this way forever. Would we like it to? Yeah, I'd love it. But I think that New England's on the rise, and I think that there's going to be major changes in Miami after this year. What that looks like, I'm dying to see, but I'm very confident in a major change in Miami after this year. Whether it's GM, coach, both, something's got to give in Miami. Hard for me to believe that they're going to be contenders this year. And when I say contenders, I mean playoff contenders. That's how I view Miami right now. It's not going to be that way forever. And you're also not going to have the benefit of playing, your non-divisional opponents like Carolina, who right now, bottom 3 team in the league, an Atlanta Falcons team who's going to be trying out Michael Penix and still trying to see what they have in him. You have the Ravens at home, the Chiefs at home. Your more difficult games are at home. It just feels like a lot of things have lined up this upcoming season for the Bills to capitalize on finally getting the 1 seed that they have been incapable of getting since Josh Allen's been the quarterback. In order to do that, they're going to have to be right at where they were last year. And it's a high bar that they have set for themselves. No question about it. Especially offensively. I mean, there's no other way to put it. What they did last year, you'd love to think that you walk out and do it every year. But they did some uncharacteristic things last year. And this certainly was one of them. But I just think that the formula that they have used to get to the point last year where they were turning it over far less than ever, I think that is sustainable. Because the offensive line, like I mentioned, is as good as it's ever been. The run game is as good as it's ever been with Josh Allen. And of course, Josh Allen now is the most mature he's been, the most disciplined he's been, and he's playing the best football he ever has. Those three things culminate into not turning the ball over, and they culminate into playing great offense. So if they turn it over slightly more, it wouldn't shock me. But I really do think that in all likelihood, the Buffalo Bills will go into this year far more, they'll finish the year far closer to the turnover rate that they had in 2024 as opposed to any other time. And I think we can rely on the Bills defense to turn it over the way that they have. They've been doing it each and every season. So I find that really interesting, just because the Bills defense, and, you know, as Signified mentioned here, and as we all know, and as we've all talked about, they get a ton of flack. But that's the one area that they've been phenomenal in. And I think we do take that for granted at times. Turning the ball over is huge. And as I've said a couple of times tonight, I don't know how different that this team would look if they haven't been able to do that. Usually teams that have a defense that's talked about the way the Bills defense is, and I hate to continue to say that, because it's not like the Bills defense is talked about like the Bengals defense was last year. It's not that bad. It's just not great. But usually when you talk about a defense that's just not great, and usually when you talk about a defense that is correlated to more so the team's issues than the team's success, you don't think that defense is going to be great at one of the more important areas of any given football game, and that's turning the ball over. They are great at it. Perhaps the best in the league. And that's what's odd about the whole defensive mindset that we have on these Buffalo Bills. You wouldn't think that they are great at one of the most important areas of a defense, but they are phenomenal at it. So it makes you wonder both sides of the coin. It makes you wonder how great they could potentially be if everything takes a step forward, right? Cole Bishop's in. Is that the solution? Are we going to get a healthy Joey Bosa? And if so, is the pressure on the quarterback going to be the best it's been, especially with the additions to the defensive line through the draft? So if you get better pressure, if you get better coverage, and if you continue to turn the ball over the way you have, match that with what the Bills offense has done, and match that with the ability to repeat what they did last year, this is where I think it results in the Bills finally narrowing the gap. John Blackman coming in. The biggest problem for the Bills defense was third down. They couldn't get off the field. Yeah, third down seemed to be, it often felt as though, it did feel as though on third down, I go back to the Rams game, of course. That was the biggest one, right? The Rams game where they had them kind of where they wanted them. Rams can convert a long third down. Remember, there was a flag called. McDermott decided to decline it. Rams wound up getting it. There's areas of the defense in particular that are just known. It's tough because it's not like this is what's so weird about this defense. It's not like you look at it and think they're just getting rolled. I was watching that quarterback series on Netflix. Like the Bengals defense, how bad it was last year cannot be overstated. It was unbelievable how bad they were. The Bills defense is just average. And I think when you have the Bills offense being as great as it is, you're just hoping that the Bills defense can be better than average to take advantage of great offense. That's the problem. In order to win, you got to have greatness everywhere. You look at the Eagles last year, they have a great offense and an even better defense. I mean, you look at that team, and that's why, to me, they are the best team in the NFL, the Eagles. They have the best defense in the league. And say what you want about Hurts. I know he's often argued as being outside of the top of the top at the quarterback position. It doesn't even matter. You got the offensive player of the year at running back. You got one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league, one of the best offensive lines in the league. It shouldn't be any secret to anybody why the Eagles won last year, and really why they won the way that they did. They rolled. If it wasn't for the Rams making a valiant late game comeback in the weather after the Eagles were blowing them out for 2 quarters, they pretty much walked to a Super Bowl title once they got to the postseason. Walked. just dominated. The Packers never stood a chance. The Rams were getting rolled in that game all the way up until all of a sudden, it almost felt like the Eagles took their foot off the gas and the Rams capitalized and made it a little scary. Saquon, I remember in that game, went for an insanely long touchdown. It widened the gap in that game substantially, and it felt like after that, they really let off the gas, and the Rams took advantage. If they would have kept going full throttle, I don't know if we get to a point where the Rams have a chance to go down and win that game late. And then they absolutely dismantled the Commanders in the NFC Championship, and what they did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl was, that was all-time stuff. The domination they displayed. So you're looking at them and you're hoping, or you're wondering, like, why can't the Bills do this? Well, the Bills don't have the best defense in the league. You look at what the Chiefs have done, right? Their offense has declined, but of course with Mahomes, they're still good enough to win any given game offensively. But what they've done defensively has more than made up for, Travis Kelce getting older, this offensive line not being all that great, Tyreek Hill leaving. The Chiefs defense, one of the best in the league. The Bills defense has not made that transition yet. And this is where I'm really excited about this year. Not to say it's going to be transitional to the point where they ascend all the way to the top. But I keep saying, I just feel like if it gets a little bit better, it's so hard to think that the Bills aren't going to be right there. They've been getting there with, like you said, signified a defense that allows their opponent to score record numbers in the postseason. And the Bills are still a possession away from winning the game. It's just going to take a little bit. Cliff's coming in. Good to have you in, Cliff. He's saying, no doubt, got to give the Eagles their props. Watch them destroy oh my God, Cliff, I forgot you went to that game. I remember how stoked we were for you going. Hey, you got 3 rings in the last, 6-7 years that you can dry your tears with and look at when you look at the $6,000 that's missing from your bank account when you went last year. I know it's got to suck to have chosen that one of all the ones to have gone to. But I'd sleep a little bit better at night having done that, having done what you did, going to that game, knowing, hey, yeah, we got rolled, but that was in our third. That was in the attempt of pulling off the first ever three-peat in NFL history. If that was the Bills in that position last year, flip your situation, Cliff, and say you were a diehard. Say you were me, and you spent that coin to go to that game, and the exact same outcome occurred. Think about how you'd feel then. At least you could have walked out of there saying, "Man, we won the 2 prior." The Bills had done that last year, and look, all I want is the Bills to get there. The Bills getting to the Super Bowl to me would be everything. Winning it would double it, of course. But getting there to me has just been that's the spectacle of the whole thing is something I've always wanted to experience. The spectacle of being part of the biggest event in the country and having it solely centered around the Buffalo Bills. It's just always been fascinating to me what that would look like. So to experience that at the bare minimum, at least you got that 2-week period where the anticipation, the excitement, the hope is at an all-time high. But God, to have gone and paid and watched that, if the Bills had lost that way, I don't think I'd ever live that down. So Cliff, it's been at our expense far too much, but at the very minimum, at least you can hold your head way, way up high. Sean's coming in. He's saying, for sure, a fluke. I don't know if we can say for sure. Just because the number, was it an outlier turning it over 8 times? Probably. But I do think that, if you were to bet on it, I got to check it. Let's take a look. How many times did they turn it over just the year prior in 2023? I mean, they turned it over 28 times in 2023. Postseason, regular season included. 28 times. Let me just make sure of this. Sometimes I'll look at the Google AI thing and it's just not accurate. So I like to double check. You ever just Google something and the AI thing pops up at the top? And like you're Googling something that you're knowledgeable of, but you want to know a little bit more. And you'll read the AI thing and you're like, that's there's no way that that's right. That one's telling me 28. Fact checking myself here. Hold on. Unless somebody in the comments has it. By the way, they were 12th in 2023 in terms of turnover differential. So just a massive leap. Not only being the best in the league, but just a massive leap in general. So they gave it away. Yep, okay. All that just to have the AI be right. They did give it away 28 total times in 2023. 8 last year. 8. So it was nearly a 4x decrease. So when we're talking about it being a fluke, would you be willing to bet right now, based on what you've seen from the O-line, what you've seen from Allen, what you've seen from the run game, would you be willing to bet right now that the number would be closer? We'll just take the last 2 years and we'll say this year will be the rubber match. Would you bet on the amount of turnovers the Bills offense having being closer to the 28 mark or the 8 mark? So the middle of that would be what? Like, I don't know. Let's say over under. It would probably be what, 18? I mean, think about it. Even if they turned it over twice as much this upcoming season, twice as much, it would still be nearly half as less as they turned it over the year prior. I mean, that's crazy. This is why I think, even though it was an outlier up until this point, I don't think it's necessarily a fluke because of how great it was. If they were significantly better, but not eye-popping better, I think that we might be having a different conversation here. They went from okay, pretty good, to best in the league. It's not like they went from okay to pretty good to really good. It was a massive leap, a massive difference. So even they've basically baked in the ability to regress in that department and still be significantly better than they were prior. This in itself is nuts. If they were to double their turnovers this upcoming season, it would still be nearly half of what they did the year prior. That's crazy. And then you also factor in the Bills' ability to turn it over at the rate in which they have on the defensive side over the last half decade. I think if we were to bet on it, I'm putting my money on the amount of giveaways in 2025 being far closer to their total in 24 as opposed to their total in 23. Allen's matured far too much. This run game has gotten far too good, and the offensive line is exactly where you want it to be. It wasn't that prior. I mean, they were running the ball well in 2023, for sure. But I mean, look what James Cook did last year. And look at how few sacks Josh Allen took last year. It was a whole different level of play. You got Cook leading the league in touchdowns. You got Allen leading the league in terms of not hitting the ground. The offensive line leading the league in the amount of sacks given up. So you just had a really big step forward. And I think you've baked in the ability to regress a little bit, because it is scary to think, do the Bills need to rely on having what feels like an historic year in terms of protecting the ball in order to get back to the AFC Championship? I don't think that they do. I think that they can turn the ball over more this year and still be closer to what they were last year than anything prior. So we'll see. Spent like 45 minutes on that. I wasn't expecting to do that, but I find that whole thing fascinating for a variety of reasons. One, the Bills' ability to just really eradicate turning the football over last year. Going from 28-8 is absolutely crazy. But what's more impressive to me here, and what's more like, wow, I really didn't know that, was the stat Joe Marino tweeted out in terms of this defense's ability to force takeaways over the last 5 years, being no worse than 7th best in terms of taking the ball away on any given drive. Crazy stuff. Deshaun coming in. No fluke. The Bills have legit weapons on offense. It's on Brady to use the weapons that he has. I mean, once again, this is where I have like a different level of excitement for this year. I'm excited for every year, but the reason I think it's a little higher this year, or noticeably higher, actually, I do think that this offense got better. And that's crazy to say after what we've just talked about all night here and what we witnessed last year in total. I do think that I think that they're better. Keon Coleman, healthy in year 2, and has made it well known. Last year didn't go the way that he wanted, and he's been putting the work in to make sure that this year isn't a repeat of that. Dalton Kincaid. I have to think that with a contract coming around the corner sooner than you think, this is the year he's got to show first-round value. Elijah Moore, showing, we saw in the early OTA sessions, bringing a speed to this offense that they haven't had. Josh Palmer. I think if you look at those two, I mean, for real, knowing Mac Hollins led the team last year in touchdown receptions, knowing that the team barely lost a game after adding Amari Cooper, despite not having major statistical production. I don't know. Wouldn't you say right now you feel more confident in the offense going into don't even think about what they did last year. Just think about where you were at this point a season ago in terms of your confidence level going into the season. Remove the outcome of the 2024 season and just think about your confidence level going into this year compared to your confidence level going into last year. And I do feel more confident knowing Coleman's in year 2. I feel more confident in Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore than I did about Mac Hollins going into last year. Was anybody expecting Mac Hollins to be the team leader in reception touchdowns? I don't think so. And we didn't have Amari Cooper on the team prior to going into last year. So now you have Allen, a proven MVP. You have a proven O-line. You have a proven run game. And I think you got a better wide receiver room than you did a season ago at this time. I think unarguably. What's up, honey? Big Mama's here, as promised. And Tofu. So we, as promised, the baby bump.
It's not that much yet.
It really, it isn't.
I just look chubby.
This is what, I mean, it is. It's far more than it was even. I was looking at some old pictures, and it's different, for sure.
But
we constantly have this discussion because, when you see each other all day, every day, you don't notice the progression of a pregnancy, really. It's weird. But I think if I were to if I saw you 5 months ago and I saw you today, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe in tighter clothes too. But
yeah,
everyone vote later and getting closer if it's a boy or girl.
Ooh, that's good. Well, say that again.
We have to make like a betting thing. Boy, girl, date of birth, weight. I think there should be like a
so it's like closest to the number, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe we'll do a giveaway on here.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's a really good idea. Lock that in. So as we get closer, once again, when's the baby due, Caroline? Week 11 of the Buffalo Bills season, correct? Yes.
When you said that, I wanted to kill you.
I knew it. When we get closer to that, we'll do that. Closest to the number. And so we'll do the gender, weight, and date. So gender, weight, date. Do you do height or no? Is that not a thing? That's not a thing, I guess. I don't know what a thing is and what isn't, but we'll definitely do that. Everyone's saying congrats again, by the way, Caroline.
Thank you.
Yep. She says thank you. She just got off a 12-hour shift, so she's heading to the bath. Much deserved. Too many babies. That'll be fun, though. We'll definitely do that. We'll do a giveaway. We'll give something away. We'll give something cool away. Maybe, how about this transition? Maybe I'll give away a mini helmet of the new Buffalo Bills helmet that is going to be debuted soon here, allegedly. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. If you've been watching me for some time, you know how long I have been just irrationally upset at the Buffalo Bills not taking advantage of the NFL ushering in the ability to have numerous alternate helmets. The Bills have not done it. And it feels like every other team in the league has. I mean, you look at some of these teams that have iconic helmets that have changed zero over the years, that have debuted new helmets. The Green Bay Packers, the Dallas Cowboys. It just feels like every team in the league has done it. And up until this point, there's numerous teams that have debuted multiple new helmets during the duration in which the Bills have not debuted one. That reportedly is going to be changing on July 22nd. Buffalo Rumblings released an article a few days ago saying that according to a reliable source that they have who's in the know, on July 22nd, the Buffalo Bills will be revealing a brand new alternate or throwback helmet. That is the only details available to anybody. Nobody knows anything, and there's been no official statement on this whatsoever. But that article hits, and my hope is already back up to the top. It was already, I already had high hopes because of the rivalry uniforms, which we'll talk about here in a second. I had hopes that the Bills would do something cool with that. This is a whole different avenue because according to the article from Buffalo Rumblings, the helmet that's going to be debuted on July 22nd is not correlated to the NFL rivalry uniforms that they're going to be releasing with Nike this upcoming season for the AFC East and for the NFC West. So what this more than likely means is the Bills are getting two new debuts, two new, I don't know if they're going to be full uniforms, but they're going to be getting at least one new helmet and at least one new uniform. That's what it seems like. And when you've gone from nothing, getting a double dose, it feels even better. I'd settle for one. It feels like we're getting two. So if you haven't heard, like I said, article came out from Buffalo Rumblings the other day. They have a source that has told them that the Buffalo Bills will be releasing a new helmet on July 22nd. So that is a week from Tuesday. And there's been a lot of little Easter eggs, I guess, that have felt like this is what it was leading to. And it just felt right. The biggest of all of them, of course, it being the last year in the Ralph. That to me was the only reason you needed to do this. The last year in the Ralph, what better send-off than to have a helmet debut to center around that and feature the most iconic era of this team. And that is the 90s era of the Buffalo Bills. The red helmet. And if it's not the red helmet, all right, something else. At one point, the Bills wore blue helmets. I don't know when the hell that. When was that? I mean, what was it? The 70s? Actually, no. No, I'm wrong. Wait, hold on. No, I'm thinking of something else. Blue face mask. That's what I'm thinking of. It was never a blue. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. It was the blue face mask. When was that? Let me see. Yeah, they had the red helmet with the blue face mask prior to making it the white face mask, which just doesn't look nearly as good. The white face mask is the best way to go in any situation. Allen wore that blue helmet during the scrimmage game that one year, a couple years ago, but it was the blue face mask. So, there's options on the table here, I guess. You let me know in the comments what you're thinking, because it's reportedly inevitable that we're getting something. And I have to imagine that it's not going to be something new. I don't think we're going to get a brand new concept. And what I mean by that is I don't think we're going to get like a silver helmet or like a black helmet during this reveal. I know this is getting confusing because a lot of people who don't keep up on like the uniform stuff, there has been no talk of the NFL rivalry uniforms that Nike's releasing. There's been no talk of this. They revealed it at the draft. I don't want to say subtly, but like kind of subtly. They announced it at the draft and they've done like no marketing on it. There's been no team has revealed anything. They've not said anything about it. And it's just felt like forgotten about up until this point. There are 8 teams this year that are getting brand new uniforms, never before seen. All 4 teams in the AFC East, Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, all 4 teams in the NFC West. Niners, Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. All 8 of those teams are getting brand new uniforms in the NFL rivalry uniform date, whatever they're calling it. They're going to be rolling out new uniforms for 2 divisions every year over the next 4 years. And it's kicking off with the AFC East and the NFC West. But this particular helmet reveal that's supposed to be happening a week from Tuesday is not correlated to that NFL rivalry uniform that the Bills will also be revealing at some point here. I mean, the season's 8 weeks away. We're going to be getting 2 new reveals within the next 8 weeks because they're going to reveal the uniforms prior to the start of the season. So I'd have to imagine that if there's going to be some creative angle on this, whether, like I mentioned, it's a blue helmet, black helmet, silver, I don't know what else it could possibly be other than that. I think if that were to happen, that's going to happen when they reveal the NFL rivalry uniforms. And not only is that going to be a potential new helmet as well, we could be getting 2 new helmets. It's a guarantee it's going to be a new uniform. That's for sure. I'm hoping that they do 2 different helmets. I hope that they have a new helmet to coincide with the rivalry uniforms. And then I'm hoping that this other helmet is more of a homage to the previous era or eras of the Buffalo Bills. Will it be a standing Buffalo logo or will it be the charging Buffalo? No one knows anything right now. My whole thing on this is that it has to be the red, because what else could it be in order to be if it's not the red helmet, what else would it be other than just doing the standing Buffalo, which they've worn prior? That wouldn't be anything significant. And if you're linking this to the last year in the Ralph, and then I forgot to mention the Easter eggs. So the other day, and I could be reading into this too much. I tend to do that sometimes. I could be doing that again here. But like right before Rumblings had released this article about getting word that the Bills were going to be revealing new uniforms, the Bills on their official website, their shop, they just launched a throwback product line. They just launched this last week. And it's all of these throwback oriented shirts and jerseys. So they have the 90s era away jerseys. They have the like throwback Mitchell and Ness shorts, but then they also have a bunch of different shirts that are all pertaining to the 90s era. And even before Rumblings had made that article, when I saw this, I'm like, they're not just doing this for no reason. Like, there's got to be a broader play here. And I know the answer to that could be, well, the broader play is it's the last season in the Ralph, and they're trying to just make a buck on it by selling merchandise to go along with it. But that just, I don't know. It does, that seems too convenient. Like, there's been a lot of this. Also earlier today, and I'm sure you guys know about this. I talk about it every year. The NFL little people, the little Fisher Price little people that I get every year. I've given away a bunch of them. I'm sure you guys have seen them by now. I'm sure a lot of you own them. Those got leaked, I think, as well. Shout out to Josh Williams on Twitter, at BillsMafia413. He leaked a photo. I don't know if he did. He found a photo of what is supposedly going to be the Bills' little people that's coming out next month as well. And look what we got here. We got Marv, Jim, Allen, and McDermott, but we got Jim Kelly with the red helmet. And once again, you could say, well, they're releasing this one to, send off the Ralph. There's too many little breadcrumbs here for me not to think that they're not going to the red helmet. You got the little people here coming out next month. This is like the 8th set of these that they've done. And prior to this, they've never featured a throwback thing or anything. And they got Jim Kelly on there with the red helmet and with, of course, the 90s kit there. Then you have the reveal of the product line on their website where they're selling a bunch of throwback merch. You have the final year at the Ralph. I mean, I don't know. The stars are aligning here. And it's getting to the point for me, and I know this is for some reason controversial. There's so many people who despise the red helmet. For whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe I know that a lot of people correlate the red helmet to suffering, but the Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls in the red helmet. I know they didn't win one, but I mean, it wasn't like they were the bottom feeders of the league in the red helmet. They were the bottom feeders of the league in the navy blue uniforms, but the red helmet doesn't seem to have, this terrible funk on it, unless you're talking about the Super Bowl. And I think a lot of us at the minimum right now, I've said, would settle just to go to a Super Bowl again, much less 4 in a row. So I don't understand the hate for the red helmet, but I have been seeing a lot of it. I actually saw someone here, no red helmet, no red helmet. I asked those, I'm not going to ask you why you don't like it, because it's fine. It's kind of like art. I mean, in a way, the uniforms are art. Art is always subjective. Music, a painting, whatever. Someone's favorite painting, someone's favorite song is somebody else's most hated painting, hated song in the world. You can't argue over it. It is what it is. And see, Signified, you know what you're twisting my words on me. I know they lost. I said it. They lost 4 Super Bowls in the red helmet. They haven't been to a Super Bowl in the white helmet. So, I mean, is it really, if we want to talk about funk, the white helmet's got the funk on it, right? They were the most successful that they've ever been with the red helmet. Let's just put it that way. So, that's funny though, because it's true. But then again, it's just like, what angle can you take here, really? At that point, everything's got funk on it. The Bills logo's got funk on it, I guess, at this point. Okay, so Deshaun's coming in, by the way. He's a big no on the red helmet. So I ask you, Deshaun, and others who are a no on the red helmet, what would you like to see revealed? Because let's factor a couple things in here. If it's just a logo change on the white helmet, it's nothing we haven't seen before. That wouldn't constitute a reveal to me. They've already worn the white helmets with the standing buffalo. The only other thing that they could do, I mean, I don't even know what else they could do, because if this helmet being revealed is going to be one that's going to be meant to celebrate previous eras of the Buffalo Bills to send off the Ralph, if that's what it's meant for, then what else could they do that would be a significant change? Because the logo change wouldn't be a reveal. So here's a picture, by the way. I got this picture up. It shows all of the different eras of the Bills helmets. So let's just take a peek here. I mean, I guess, like someone I saw mentioned in here earlier, I guess that they could do their first ever helmet, which is a silver blank helmet with numbers on the side. It's actually what my Penn State Nittany Lions did. Penn State's never really veered from the norm. Penn State's always been blue tops, white bottoms, black cleats, and that's all you're getting. And they finally revealed Peaster. They finally revealed a new uniform a couple of years ago, and it wasn't much of a change, but they did do the number on the side. By the way, before we keep talking about helmets, this is my nephew, JP. JP, I'm on YouTube right now. You know YouTube. What do you think about that? You want to say something?
Oh, Bills.
What are you want to know what we're talking about? The Bills. What did you ask me the other day? You said, did the Bills win? I said, we'll find out in 8 weeks, right? We're going to watch them together. Well, we were recording a fake podcast, you and I, the other day on here. Don't you remember that? And now I'm doing a real one.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And you got your Bills colors on, by the way. Let's show them off. Let's see. Look at this. He's got his blue and red on. What do you want to say? What were you just doing upstairs?
Playing.
What were you playing? No way. I heard we were getting ice cream in a little bit. You what? You got to talk into this so that they can hear you, so I can hear you. Talk into this thing.
I got real ice cream.
You did? You already got ice cream?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, we're going to get it.
Yeah.
What flavor are we going to get?
Chocolate.
No. Sprinkles too?
Yeah.
Cone?
Yeah.
Oh, my. Are you going to get any of it in your mouth or are you going to get it all over you?
I want to get top.
You want to get toppings?
Yeah.
All right. Fudge?
My red.
All right. So I'll ask you one more thing. Who's your favorite football team?
The Bills.
That's what I thought. All right. Well, it's great to see you, buddy, and we're going to get some ice cream in a little bit. All right. Sounds good. Also, the one thing JP's been asking me for that I got to be a better uncle and get on. Every time he sees me, he asks if he can have a Bills hat. And I have been a deadbeat uncle, to be honest with you, up until this point. I keep forgetting to do it. I got to get the kid a damn Bills hat. And maybe I'll do it once we get, because you know that, by the way, when these new helmets come out, get ready to open up that wallet. Because they're going to go nuts. They're going to be selling the mini helmet. They're going to be selling a bunch of merch surrounding all this. Like, that's going to be happening. No question about it. All right, let's go back to this. Okay, so to Deshaun and the other folks who said they don't like the red helmet, they don't want the red helmet. We don't have any other options here. So you got to let me know what you're hoping for, because clearly you're hoping for some major break from the norm. The only other option you'd have in terms of a helmet that's meant to celebrate previous eras would be the first ever helmet with the number on the side. Like I was mentioning, Penn State did this. Penn State came out with alternate throwback uniforms, and all they changed was the little logo on the collar. It went from the Nittany Lion logo to a photo of the Nittany Lion statue that's on Penn State's campus. And then they put the number on the side. The one other change that they made was they wore white cleats with it too, which looks so much better, by the way. Black cleats, awful. I know it's tradition at Penn State. I know it. I get it. Black cleats, 2 thumbs down. They look terrible. I don't care how awesome your uniforms are, unless you're wearing, actually, it doesn't matter. Even if you're wearing an all black uniform, I can't stand black cleats. And I don't know about you guys, but growing up playing sports, if you wore black cleats, usually you knew that kid wasn't very good. If someone was wearing black cleats, more often than not, there was either 2 things. Either that kid wasn't very good at the sport, or he was going to run you over. Because you got to be kind of loose up there to be wearing up. You got to be a little crazy to be wearing black cleats, in my opinion. Anyway, so let me know what you think. I mean, if you don't want the red, our options are limited. We're either gonna have a logo change, which wouldn't be a new helmet, or they could do the silver. Now, I will say, will I be pissed if they don't do the red helmets? Yes. I mean, there's no excuse to not do it anymore. There's no excuse. I can't fathom squandering this opportunity. It makes absolutely no sense not to do it. However, if they decide not to do it, the silver helmet with the number on the side is kind of badass. Like the silver helmet with the number on the side with a white helmet, with a white face mask. I don't like the silver face mask. With a white face mask. That would be low-key pretty sweet. The problem is you can't wear that helmet with their current uniform. If they, however, were to do for the Nike Rivalry Series, if they were to come out with a silver uniform where it's silver and blue, just like that helmet on the screen, with that type of helmet, I mean, I'd be in for that. But you couldn't wear that silver helmet with their current uniforms. It would look terrible. It would have no correlation. It would just look way off. So with that said, I hate to break this to everybody, and I love to break it to myself. Or I hate to break it to those who don't want the red helmets. I love to break it to people like me who do want them. I think it's a no-brainer. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be, one, stunned, and two, honest to God, low-key, pretty pissed. Because it just makes no sense up until this point to not do it. And you saw the thumbnail of this episode. I mean, how do you not look at that photo of Josh Allen in the 90s era uniform and not think to yourself, my God, that is the cleanest getup I've ever seen? Leo's saying no to the standing buffalo. In my opinion, the charging buffalo is infinitely better than the standing buffalo. I love the standing buffalo. I got it on my hat here. I love the standing buffalo because it's vintage Bills. Like I love vintage logos. There's so many amazing ones. I think that the Steelers have one of the coolest vintage logos where it's the guy working on a steel beam. Eagles have a great one. I just love seeing like the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Broncos. There's so many awesome throwback logos, and I love going throwback. But if I had to choose between a permanent, like if the Bills were going back to the drawing board again and saying we have to choose between these two designs, it's the charging buffalo every day of the week and twice on Sunday over the standing one. No question about it. I just like it because of the history behind it. I much prefer the charging buffalo over the standing. Now, could they do a standing white buffalo? Whoa, okay, this just came to my mind. I didn't even thought about this. Could they do a mix of both? Could they combine both eras and do a red helmet with a standing white buffalo on the side? Just thought of that now. It's still a no for me. The answer to the test is on the teacher's desk. Or actually, not even that. The answer to the test is written on the desk. You just sat down in your desk to take the seat, and the answer to the test is on the desk. 100% on the exam. If you look to the corner of your desk, put down the answer. And the answer is red helmet. It's the answer. I want it so bad. And I think it's going to happen. I don't know what other angle that they could have. But anyway, regardless of what your thoughts are or your opinions are on the color scheme, they're coming. Something new's coming. 2 new things are coming. Now, if we do get the throwback helmet on the 22nd, then it gets really interesting for that rivalry uniform because they're not going to take a throwback approach on the rivalry uniform because they just revealed the throwback helmet. Then that's where it gets really, really intriguing to me because they're going to go a whole different road. I think that's the point of this rivalry series. I've often compared it to the NBA City series where they debuted multiple lineups of uniforms for NBA teams that, for the most part, were not correlated to what their current uniform is. Some went the throwback approach, but they hadn't done that prior. Like the Raptors, for instance, who have the best throwback jersey in the history of the NBA. Like some teams will go the throwback road, but I would imagine that those that do would be teams that haven't done it yet. Ooh, David's got an idea. David's saying, the only way I would expect a standing white buffalo is on a blue helmet. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that would look so much better. I think with the rivalry uniform, a blue helmet would be cool. Then you'd have the blue, the red, the white. You'd have the whole thing locked down. But the rivalry situation, to me, I am hoping we get something off the beaten path, like a black uniform, a silver, I think would be sweet. I don't know what else you could really do. It's not like they're going to come out with a green uniform. It just wouldn't make any sense. They're going to, I would imagine, incorporate their color scheme within the new uniform. What that looks like, however, that's going to be up to the creative, like, mind behind it. Like Miami, for instance, Miami could do a Miami Vice with their rivalry series. They could do a Miami Vice where they come out with a pink and baby blue uniform. It would make sense. Even though it's not their color scheme, it's the known color scheme of the city of Miami. When you think, if I asked you, when you think of two colors when it comes to Miami, what would it be? It would be that. So it would make sense. With Buffalo, it's most cities, by the way, don't have like a color you think of. Miami's unique in that way. But I have seen the mock-ups of Buffalo being the nickel city with silver uniforms to coincide with that. I'm in on that. Silver helmets, silver uniforms up and down, maybe a silver top, white bottom. Something like that would be sweet. But best believe when these drop, the first person you're going to hear from is me. When these drop, I'm going to be going live immediately to discuss it because I, for some reason, am infatuated with this more than I should be. I've been waiting for it forever, and I'm going to be all over it the second it happens, good, bad, or indifferent. Whether I love it or hate it, I'm going to be on here. And if it's the red helmet, I'm going to be on here with a ear-to-ear grin. Big time. And once again, that's happening allegedly, rumor has it, July 22nd, a week from Tuesday. So we'll see what happens. But if you didn't know, that's what's supposed to, this is the timeline. 8 weeks until week 1 of the NFL season. Within that time, the Bills are rumored to be debuting a new helmet on July 22nd, and then they're 100% going to be revealing the rivalry series uniform at some point. There's been no word as to when that's happening. That's what's on the docket. And then once again, 10 days from today, training camp kicks off. And then, we're locked and loaded, folks. Training camp kicks off. Me, Rico, we're back on chopping it up with you beautiful people. And we're riding that train all the way until Baby Bot comes, and then all the way to hopefully February. So buckle up. Me and Rico got our conductor hats on. You guys hang out in the cabin, get situated, because we're about to go on another journey. This time, 2025. Hopefully this journey leads to the promised land like we always hope it does each and every year. I wanted to talk about so much more, but I was just told by Caroline that we're taking my nephew, who you just met, JP, out for ice cream. And I think Caroline probably wants some ice cream. So I got to go do ice cream duty. I got to go do husband and uncle duties and pre-dad duties. Because, if we're getting Caroline ice cream, we're getting Baby Bot ice cream at this point. That's how my mind's working now. So I got to go do pre-dad, uncle, and husband duties. And I just realized, by the way, we're an hour 45 in. Classic. Hour 45 in, I talked about like 3 subjects. I appreciate you letting me shake the dust off a little bit tonight, wash the rust off a little bit, kind of shaking things out, getting back into it. I was telling Caroline, she's like, you haven't done one in a while. I'm like, I know, we've been super busy and there hasn't been anything to talk about. But I said, enjoy it because we're this close. We're this far away from doing 6+ a week. So, ooh, baby, that gets me excited. All right. I got to roll out. I wanted to talk more. I wanted to talk about that quarterback series and whatever. Maybe I'll do that later on in the week. But by then, I don't know if anybody's going to care. But maybe we will. I don't know. We're going to do something coming up here. Going to try to get on with Rico. By the way, hit up Rico on social media. It was him and Jenna's, I believe, what was it this weekend? 16th anniversary. And they were out celebrating. They went on a nice mini vacay. So if you talk to Rico, make sure to wish him a happy anniversary, him and Jenna. We'll be back on this week. I wanted to do it this past weekend, but he was out celebrating the anniversary. So we'll be back on this week. And then, like I keep saying, camp's here. We'll be on, going crazy. And then it's the season. Cannot wait. All right. Much love to all of you. Appreciate you tuning in on a Sunday night for a $145. We'll back with you later on in the week. And then it's full steam ahead. All righty, folks. Much love as always. I'm just rambling now. Got to go get ice cream. Talk to you soon. And as always, go Bills.